thanks again for everyone joining. Wanted to talk about unifying monitoring and alerting to resolve issues faster today. We all know that many of you are coming with some on-call platforms here today, and many of you are already in Datadog on-call, which is wonderful. So wanted to introduce two of us today. So I'm Dan Roy. I'm a senior cloud engineer over here at RapDev. Joined today by Curtis Marr, who leads the product marketing for the on-call product at Datadog. So what we're going to do today is we're here to talk about how we can help bridge that gap between alerting and action. And that means rethinking your on-call operations and unifying how your team handles issues all in one place in Datadog. And for some of you, that might mean reevaluating the tools that you've used over years. Maybe, it could be PagerDuty, Opsgenie, or maybe even a homegrown system. And whether those tools have become too rigid or too noisy or too disconnected from your observability data, what we're here to show you is a more integrated and efficient future, what a more integrated and efficient future looks like, and how to get there without disruption. So with that, let's jump into the agenda and what we're going to cover. So first, we're going to cover who RapDev and Datadog are, so you understand who we are and how we're each supporting modern on-call operations. Curtis is going to walk us through Datadog on-call as a product, what's going on under the hood and why adoption is growing so fast, as we can see from the poll so far. From there, I'm going to dive into how we typically work on migrations, what can make them challenging, what makes them successful, and how teams are using the opportunity to move away from legacy tooling, that no longer meets their needs. We'll talk about a structured approach that can simplify the transition and where a partner like RapDev can accelerate success. I'm going to hand it back to Curtis to jump in and tie it all back with Datadog's broader incident response ecosystem, showing how all these pieces connect and when it's time to take action. And then we'll close it out with some QA. So again, as we're talking about, reevaluating your on-call, what we're hoping to have you walk with today is a clear understanding of what solid on-call migration strategy looks like, the steps that it includes, how to sequence them, and where teams tend to get stuck. We're going to have you have a chance to benchmark where you're at compared to others based on your adoption trends, tooling shifts, and what your peers are prioritizing. And hopefully, at the end, you'll have a few ideas, workflows, or new features to bring back to your team to help make incident response more effective. So a bit about RapDev. For those of you who haven't worked with us before, RapDev is a Datadog Premier Partner, 4 years running Partner of the Year. What we do is we specialize in scalable observability solutions, and we've helped over 550 Datadog implementations across a number of industries: financial services, healthcare, retail, and logistics. But we're not resellers. We're engineers. We build, we operate, and we automate systems at scale. We've developed a number of marketplace items, over 50 at this point, helping adoption, application observability needs, speeding up adoption and driving automation. And from an infrastructure to app monitoring standpoint, now through incident response, our team works alongside our customers to modernize how they use Datadog, no matter where they are in their journey. With that, our goal is to help you get the most out of Datadog. That's why our engagements are always tied to your environment, your teams, and your outcomes. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Curtis to introduce Datadog.
Hey, everybody, and thanks, Dan. I'm sure most of you here today are at least somewhat familiar with Datadog. But for those of you who may not be, we are a SaaS-based observability and security platform that supports engineering teams globally with over 30,000 customers ranging from small startups to Fortune 50 companies. To support our global customer base, Datadog spends roughly 30% of our revenue back into R&D and product enhancement. This is the highest percentage of anybody in the industry, and it helps our customers innovate and continue to drive forward into the future. You can see how this plays out in our platform and how it's grown since we were founded in 2010. On the next slide, if you look at the bottom left of this chart, you can see our founding vision was to break down silos across engineering organizations by providing a real-time unified data platform. As I mentioned, our platform has grown tremendously. With Datadog, teams can observe any stack at any scale. They can secure their applications and take action faster. So many of our customers rely on Datadog to identify, troubleshoot, and remediate issues in their most critical services. And this has really been a key focus of our product organization. Going back to 2020, you can see when we launched incident management, and most recently, On-Call launched at the start of this year. And that's what Dan and I are really excited to discuss with you all today.
Thanks, Curtis. So we also wanted to take a step back and talk about you, the people in the room. So based on the registrations and conversations we've had with many of you, this is a mix of both existing Datadog customers and prospective users. Some of you are deeply embedded in Datadog already, and others are just getting started. Most of you are somewhere along your migration journey, whether it's from PagerDuty, Opsgenie, or consolidating alerting and incident response. So while the presentation has structure here, we know everyone's context is going to be a little bit different. But we ask that, as we get into QA, keep those questions coming in the chat. So as you hear things, we'll be able to bring those up at the end. So I wanted to talk a bit about some of the challenges that we see across teams, working in traditional on-call tools, especially those, disconnected from the rest of the stack. Big one is how brittle the config management can be over time. Most teams are managing org structure, alert routing, and escalation logic, not just in their on-call tool, but they have to do it in their alert sources, their monitoring platforms, CI/CD pipelines, and maybe even your individual applications. When you've got routing logic scattered like that, keeping everything aligned can be a challenge. And when it drifts, alerts get missed or they end up with the wrong team. Then there's, lack of context. Your alert might fire, but it tells you very little about why it happened. You might be stuck jumping through your alerting platform, various logs, dashboards, and tracing tools, and a half a dozen browser tabs just to start investigating. And that's before you've even told anyone what's going on. When your on-call system doesn't provide that context up front, responders are losing valuable time trying to piece it together. We also see issues with ownership and impact. Often our alert severities and routing logic are configured separately in an alert source than the on-call platform, and they're not always consistent. That can lead to situations where alerts go to the wrong team or the wrong priority gets assigned and the real issue gets buried under noise. And even when you figured out what's happening, the actual response is spread across a ton of tools. So it could go to Slack, Jira, Teams, or maybe email or ticketing systems. Everyone's reacting in their own silo, and it's hard to coordinate a unified response. And finally, after all this, teams might be tracking mean time to acknowledge or alert volume, but those metrics are rarely led to improvement. Without that connected view and incidents, from detection through resolution, it's really hard to actually see where it's working or where to invest in process change. So these are some of the symptoms of a deeper issue, fragmentation, and that's what we're here to help address.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, those challenges are exactly why our teams built On-Call. We wanted to give customers a fully integrated on-call and paging solution native to our platform, and built really to work seamlessly with our observability, incident management, and automation stack. There are just a few key features of on-call that our customers have been really excited about, and that I want to discuss briefly. First really is the user experience. So with Datadog On-Call, creating and managing schedules is fast and intuitive. We've been able to deliver kind of that modern scheduling experience that gives teams confidence in their on-call coverage. So, it's easy to see who's on call now, who's next, and how shifts are handed off. Next here is the substance of the pages themselves. So what really sets Datadog On-Call apart is the context that comes with every alert. logs, metrics, traces, they're all linked automatically so that when you get paged, you're not starting from scratch. You can begin triaging immediately without digging for data or trying to switch tools. And importantly, with the Datadog mobile app, you can actually do all of this from anywhere. So obviously you can acknowledge alerts, but you can also review dashboards or investigate telemetry and declare incidents all just from your phone. So whether you're away from your desk or maybe in the middle of your commute, you're always there in the loop and in control. And the last thing to note here is, on-call includes these built-in analytics that really help teams manage the operational burden that comes with on-call ownership. You can track who's getting paged the most, how quickly pages are getting acknowledged, and where improvements are needed. And it's that visibility that really helps teams rebalance rotations and build fairer, more sustainable on-call schedules. I do want to note, it's been kind of a remarkable reception we've seen. On-call has been one of our fastest growing products at Datadog ever. We first launched On-Call last year at our Dash conference in June of 2024. Hopefully some of you were there. But from that moment, we worked really closely with our beta users to launch the product into GA at the start of this year. And if you fast forward to today, just 8 months later, we've now already seen over 24,000 new users adopt On-Call in 2025 alone. So, what's driving that growth is kind of this shift we're seeing across the industry. It's really tied to some of the pain points that Dan was speaking about just a moment ago. Teams are really rethinking rather, how they manage on-call. They're trying to move away from some of the fragmented tooling options out there towards a more unified approach and automated workflows that can help their incident response process and protocol. And that's really where we've been able to help. So Datadog On-Call brings together alerting, paging, and incident response into the same platform where your telemetry already lives. So that means less time scrambling for context and faster, less stressful responses. So let's shift gears here. And I want to talk about how does this all work and what does it really look like to get started with On-Call? It's important to note On-Call customers benefit from Datadog's broad network of over 900 out-of-the-box integrations. So that provides really wide coverage of all sorts of alert sources, from infrastructure and services to other third-party tools you might be using, so that you can start paging on alerts with pretty minimal setup. It's this broad integration footprint that we have that makes it a lot easier to build reliable workflows that you need on top of the tools that you're already using today. Getting a little bit deeper, this helps a lot when you're setting up On-Call. Our product On-Call is built as this natural extension to the way that teams already monitor and respond to issues in Datadog. So just to break it down in simple terms, this starts with your alert sources, right? So that could be a Datadog monitor, an incident, something from a third-party integration, or even a custom API trigger. When something fires as an alert, it becomes a page. That page then gets routed to a team. So it's important to note teams are our central organizational unit in On-Call, and they're responsible for managing alert response for a given service, function, or domain. So for example, this could be your payment service team or your infrastructure team. From there, our routing rules are what takes over. These include routing logic, schedules, escalation policies. Also, alerts follow the right path, so they reach the right people and that they get escalated when needed. Importantly, this setup is very flexible, so you can route based on urgency or other metadata. You can create custom escalation behavior and build layered schedules to support setups like follow the sun coverage or primary, secondary rotations. And finally, when that notification is sent out, it's going through whatever channel your team prefers. So there's a range of options. It could be Slack, Teams, email, SMS, a voice call, or inside the Datadog mobile app. What's really powerful about this flow, well, first is its simplicity, but it's also that it's really fully connected from end to end. So This is from your first alert to the final resolution. You're able to manage all of this inside Datadog if you choose. As you're thinking about actually getting started and implementing Datadog, it's important to recognize it requires you to think about your current setup with whatever tooling you're using today and your ideal setup, how you want your team to work in the future. Getting there from A to B is something that, Dan and the RapDev team have done countless times. And so that's really where they're going to provide our expertise. So Dan, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Curtis. So yeah, just wanted to start to speak about how us at RapDev and how at Datadog we look to approach migrating to Datadog on call. So after speaking on how on-call platforms can become disjointed and hard to manage, and how Datadog looks to solve it, what we want to do is we want to level set here about what we think a successful on-call migration looks like. At RapDev, we approach this as a structured journey, not just moving settings from one tool to another, though it is possible, but using the transition to build a more resilient and maintainable on-call process. What we've done is we've broken this into 4 clear phases: discovery and assessment, design and implementation, testing and validation, and operationalization. And these are built to reduce risk, to help support your teams, and ultimately create a better on-call outcome. So with that, starting with discovery, this is where we're going to zoom out and take stock of your current on-call ecosystem. So that includes the users, the teams, the schedules, escalation policies, all the pieces that control who gets paged and when. But we're not going to stop there. We also look at the alert sources themselves. What's generating alerts today? Are those alerts reaching the right people? Are they meaningful? We pull in data around volume, ownership gaps, coverage windows. We look for signs of fatigue, those things that are unowned monitors, services that with constant noise, or high page rates that are rarely resulting in action. The goal here is clarity. What we're trying to map out is what's working, what's misfiring, and what's no longer needed. So then we can avoid dragging unnecessary complexity into the new system. This phase sets the tone for the rest of the project. And because we don't fully understand what we're starting with, we can't build something better. So now, once we've mapped out what exists and what needs cleanup, we're going to move into this design and implementation phase. This is where we rebuild your on-call structure, but more importantly, modernizing it. So we're going to look to create teams with clear ownership, layered schedules that reflect real-world rotations, and escalation policies that mirror how your teams are actually responding to incidents. We're also going to create routing rules that use service tags, time windows, and urgency filters, so your alerts just aren't getting, not just getting sent, but they're sent with purpose. And what we do is we try to avoid a one-to-one replication of your legacy setup. Just because something existed in your current paging platform doesn't mean that it should exist the same way in Datadog. So this is that chance to improve consolidating old configs or eliminating redundant schedules, and aligning routing to how your teams are working today. So we're going to use automation and tooling wherever possible. So instead of clicking through the UI, which we're also able to do from a self-service standpoint, we find that it can be easier to rapidly deploy it by setting up the teams and the whole structure through code. So what we do is we extract the information that we can from your current setup. We show a report to you about how that looks. We make adjustments in your configs, and then we push it into the Datadog platform. That usually helps us speed things up, reducing human error, and making the setup repeatable. Now, from here, we have everything in place. Your teams are all set up, your schedules, escalation policies. Your teams have got the Datadog app ready to go. Notifications are ready to flow through. And this is the part where we start shifting from setup mode to response mode. We're not just configuring anymore. We're acting like these are real. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate these live alerts. We're going to enable your teams, testing escalation paths, verifying that the right person is being paged, and checking whether routing behaves the way that we expect across different scenarios. During the weekends, holidays, after hours, is your urgent traffic escalating correctly? Are your pages going to your knock when they're supposed to? Does failback chain actually trigger? What we're going to do is bring in real engineers at this point from the company side. Ideally, folks who are on call, we want their input. We want to understand, does the alert show up where they expect? Are they getting the context they need to take action? And we can use synthetic events or targeted monitor triggers to stress test the new system. The goal isn't just to verify that it works, but to help you build trust in that new workflow before anything real is riding on it. Now, after we've tested everything, we're ready for go live. This is where the shift alerts from the old system to the new one. And that means, making that clean break, but with some guardrails in place. Some customers have preferred to do a phase cutover, routing alerts from specific services or environments first, then expanding as confidence grows. Others go in all at once. And either way, we support that transition so alerts don't get dropped and nothing gets routed incorrectly. What we do is we update monitors, integrations, notification settings, and often disable and archive legacy configs so that they're not silently running in the background. We also work with teams to update runbooks and documentation. So when people know that the new system is working, they also know where to look when something breaks. And after go live, we track performance. We want to make sure that your alert volumes are looking to be what you expected. Are incidents being acknowledged and resolved faster? Does that mean time to acknowledge an escalation pattern look healthy? So operationalization doesn't stop when the system is live. It's about making sure that it stays clean, aligned, and effective. So all of this, where does RapDev fit in all this? So what we do is we're here with you from the beginning. We help you dig into that data during discovery. We build out those visualizations for you so that you can see where your alert fatigue is, or where it's hiding, and identifying what needs to change. Now, we help design and implement that new setup using automation to build those schedules, policies, teams, routing logic quickly and repeatably. We don't just give you a script. We work with your team to make sure everything's configured the way that you actually operate. What we're going to do is we guide testing by simulating those alert flows. We help your engineers run real drills in a safe environment, and iterate quickly on anything that doesn't behave the way that you expect. After that cutover, we stick around. We help make sure we're tracking the outcomes, fine-tuning your configs, and making sure your team is confident in what they've built. Our job isn't just to migrate the system, it's to make sure the system is better than what you had before. So now that we've covered the process to effectively migrate to on-call, I'm going to hand it back to Curtis to speak, on how on-call fits into Datadog's broader incident response feature set.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for that walkthrough. We really appreciate the partnership and how RapDev can help customers migrate such critical tooling and make it not a stressful endeavor. Taking a quick step back, as many of you know, on-call is kind of just one piece of this puzzle, right? So when something goes wrong in production, getting paged is kind of just the beginning. What matters most is almost everything that happens next. So, who gets pulled in, how do you coordinate, how quickly do you get to the root cause of that issue, and how are you going to improve as a team going forward? And this is typically where we see a lot of friction with folks we're talking to. It's when their tooling is split across different systems. Maybe they've one for monitoring, one for paging, another for chat, and one for case management. The list goes on. And this is really what we see slowing down teams, because they're forced to context switch really when they want to do so least, when there's an urgent issue and they're trying to work against the clock. So, addressing this challenge is why we built incident response as part of our observability platform. So instead of stitching together different tools, you can manage that full life cycle from the first alert to resolution all in one platform. I want to walk through this slide kind of piece by piece because this really does start with on-call. But it's more than just sending pages here. So with our alerts, they come alert enriched with this telemetry that you need. It's the metrics, traces, and logs that you're so familiar with from Datadog. But they're with the responder, so they have the context they need right away. That means they don't need to manually dig through dashboards or Slack threads just to figure out what broke. Teams can also, from there, kind of set up routing logic or escalations to match how they actually work, whether they're global or just working in one city in North America. We track on-call load and alert fatigue as well. So over time, you can adjust rotations before a team gets burned out and things decline. Going to the middle, we also have incident response, which is a natural pairing here. With a single click, you can declare an incident, and that will kick off automations that gather your team in a single channel with the context they need, and you can start tracking the response efforts in one shared timeline. So there's no need to continually kind of maintain context and consensus, nor do you have to manually document every step throughout this process or do so after the fact. That timeline really becomes the source of truth for your response, and when it's over, you're already in a really solid position. You have the data you need to generate a postmortem and track remediation over time. So with that, it's a lot easier to look at how you're look at how you're handling incidents at kind of a broader scale and not just react to them every time one comes up. And so this all comes together in Datadog Incident Response, where we can allow teams to alert the right people, then really easily coordinate their work, and then take action all from one platform. That's what we're really excited about. And that's what we see when on-call and incident management come together in Datadog. They form this complete incident response workflow in the same platform where all their data already lives. So, again, it really starts with that rich context that enables responders to take action immediately. That's carried through with clear ownership, which is mapped in Datadog, that gets the right teams working together quickly. And from there, we have centralized visibility that keeps everybody aligned and helps to coordinate incidents more efficiently. And again, throughout all of this, you're getting metrics that you can really work with. So it makes it easier to spot patterns, refine how you respond, and prevent issues from being recurring issues. And at the end of the day, this is what incident response looks like when it's part of the same system that you already rely on for observability. There's going to be less switching, fewer blind spots, and a response process that actually fits the way that your engineering teams operate today. So let's just ground this, with a real example. So we have this customer, Aha, and they worked with us to change how they approach incident response using Datadog. So, they were running into some of the common challenges that we see, a lot of the things that we've discussed already in this presentation. They had response workflows that were siloed. They had monitoring on call. Their coordination tools were disconnected, which created some inefficiencies and delays. Their scheduling tool was rigid and lacked the structure they needed, which made it difficult to manage rotations effectively. And they also had pretty significant challenges when it came to onboarding new engineers. There was a lot of friction as these individuals had to learn multiple systems, and ultimately, that slowed how they could adopt into the new team. So after that, though, they rolled out with Datadog Incident Response, bringing together our on-call solution with incident management together with APM, and that gave them this single system to handle alerting, triage, and coordination, so they could manage incidents quickly without needing to switch through tools. As a result, they were able to improve their remediation time. They had clear ownership with structured schedules, and at the end of the day, they could ship new releases faster, which is what they cared about most. This is just one great example of how aligning incident response with observability can really help engineering teams move faster without having to sacrifice some of the clarity or control that they really rely on. With that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Dan. We can wrap us up for today.
All right, thanks, Curtis. Before we move into QA, just wanted to quickly recap sort of what we've covered. So we first looked at what Datadog on-call and incident response are all about. A modern unified way to manage alert routing, escalations, and team coordination, all within the same platform that you already use to monitor your systems. Then, we walked through what a migration would look like, breaking it into 4 phases: discovery, design, validation, and operationalization. And having that structured plan along with the right partner can make that transition smoother, faster, and far less risky. Finally, we brought this in to see how this fits into your broader incident response strategy. On-call is not just about paging the right person. It's about connecting alerting, observability, communication, and resolution into the single streamlined process. And when all of those parts are connected, your team responds faster and learns more from every incident. With that, I'm going to open things up to questions. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I see we have a few questions in the chat. I think we should just get started answering them. So I'll go from the top. I think a lot of these are focused on the product itself. So the top one here is, so is there a plan to create orchestration for pages triggered by alerts sent outside of Datadog? Yeah, so I would go beyond saying there's a plan. That's actually something that we support already with the product. So examples of external sources include email. You could use our API or phone calls, and these get treated as inputs the same way as sources that originate in Datadog. So you can send it into the same routing rules and escalation policies, as you would with a Datadog native alert. The tool is built to be extensible in that way. It's not just for what happens in Datadog, but really for your whole environment. Obviously, there's a lot of value in triggering alerts off of things that you see in Datadog, but this isn't meant to be a narrow solution, but something that applies to your entire environment. Let's see, and feel free to follow up in the chat if you want to ask a clarifying question. I see the next question here is on from Rahul. We have, I assume schedules allow setting up different time zones. How does an escalation policy handle that when an alert comes through? For example, primary responder in India and an alert came in US time. Yeah, so schedules have time zones baked into it. So when a page is triggered, that escalation policy is going to take into account like the responders in their time zone. Obviously, the full answer here is that there's a lot of customization that you can use here, but if you're doing a follow the sun rotation and you have a team that's global, you can then route to teams that are in their working hours. If you have a primary and secondary setup and one individual is in India and another is in US, you can have the individual in the US address the alert. But in short, this is meant to accommodate teams that are working across different time zones, and that's definitely taken into account with how escalation policies can be built up. Great. And so from Eric, we have a question: do you consider on-call a competitor to the PagerDuty integration? Certainly. Yeah, our this solution in many ways can do everything PagerDuty can do and more. We're really excited to have this functionality in our platform. We have a lot of customers today that use PagerDuty and a growing list of customers that are using on-call instead. And that's really what we were focused on is offering our own solution that takes a little bit of a more modern approach to some of the functionality that people have come to expect from other legacy tools out there. Chris, I see your question on whether on-call incident management, incident response are three separate products. Great clarification for me to make here. So incident response is a bundle of on-call and incident management. So if you choose, you can purchase on-call and incident management separately, but at a discounted rate, you can get them together with incident response. We also have a question on our documentation that would help a small team get started. Yeah, let me copy in a link to our core on-call documentation that I think should be a very helpful resource for anybody that is looking to dig in a little bit more. And I think team, if I might not have sent this to Parrot, I'll type an answer here. All right, I hope you all received that. And if you didn't, please feel free to bump the message. All right, let's keep it going. I think we're covered. So when implementing Datadog on-call in sync with ongoing PagerDuty, if there's a monitor alert, how does it handle that? And will a user acknowledging it in one app auto sync with the other app? You know, Dan, I actually think I might give you this opportunity to hop in. I think you're probably more like familiar with like the phase of going from a legacy tool to Datadog and how you want to monitor handle that behavior as you're transitioning.
Yeah, this is where that transition part where we do the testing typically comes into play. What customers usually do is they don't have paging happening in both platforms for the same alert. What you would do is either switch entirely from one to the other, alert by alert, to be able to see how that works, whether it's in lower environments or with a particular service, or doing full-scale adjustment. So what you would be doing is, for PagerDuty, for instance, it has a handle that you add to your monitors or synthetics. What you would do is instead switch that over to the @OnCall handle for your respective team, and that would pick up the portion in terms of how it's going to then route that alert and send it to whoever's on call.
Great. Thanks, Dan. We also have a question. Is it possible to configure the system to escalate alerts to a backup contact if the primary on-call doesn't respond? Yes, definitely. So with on-call, you can automatically escalate if the response isn't made in time. This is typically done based on, a determined amount of time that transpires without a response that would trigger the escalation. And there are a number of different ways to kind of configure this based on, how you actually want that to play out in reality. But the short answer is yes. I see.
Yeah.
Dan, you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was just going to say we would typically walk through adding that kind of information or that kind of policy into your escalation policy. So as you understand, like a primary on-call person not responding, you would have potentially multiple schedules or a particular like tertiary person who is the fallback. I've seen it where, you have primary, secondary, and if neither of those happen, then you have a single person that's at the end set, possibly a manager of sorts, who is able to say, hey, my primary and secondary haven't picked up, be the person to reach out to them in case something like that happens. And you can also have that, rotate back around to say, all right, primary didn't respond, secondary didn't respond, go back to primary. And it can do that as many times as necessary.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. See, Maria asked, how does the price for on-call and incident management compare to PagerDuty? I actually don't have PagerDuty's exact pricing in mind right now. I know it can vary according to the the account that they're working with. I know on average we tend to be cheaper, but what I will say is, we have very transparent pricing. I'll actually provide a link to our pricing page right here, which I sent. For Datadog On-Call, it's $20 a seat. Incident management is $30 a seat, but you can get these together with incident response for $40 a seat. I think going to PagerDuty is probably the best way to get an exact quote for you and your team. But I'll leave it there. Okay. So then we have another question here. Opsgenie is going away in 2026. They have a lot of integrations, a lot of teams with on-call and outgoing rules, incoming rules and automations. How should we plan to lift and shift? The source of all alerts is Datadog. Dan, I think that's a perfect question for you.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're aware Opsgenie is on its way out, and a number of folks are looking to see sort of what's out there to be able to pick up that from sustainability and sort of I don't know, what we're expecting to see a lot of folks moving away from Opsgenie to one or another tool. What we would do is we would typically, like I mentioned before, in terms of that discovery phase, what we would do is take a look at, so luckily you already have all of your alerts coming through Datadog. So you wouldn't necessarily, you would pretty much be focusing on getting your teams and the routing rules configured, and then your incoming rules are likely going to be around figuring out how those events are coming through from Datadog. You may be able to reduce that chunk of configuration, dealing more with your routing rules to your paging destination. The automations, we would probably be walking through like Datadog workflows, and then any of the integrations surrounding that. Happy to, if you're able to reach out to the sales@RapDev email address, which we could put in the email after we get things sent out, you'd be able to reach out to them, and we could sort of have a discussion about how we would walk through that.
Great. Another question on, generally the growing emphasis of AI adoption. So yeah, so how does incident response take advantage of AI? So some of you may have heard of our Bits AI agent that launched earlier this year. Within incident management, we have a number of different Bits AI features, and those are really focused on helping to coordinate incidents. So they do things like, Bits will help and do things like provide, incident summaries as folks join the channel. You can ask questions in natural language to pull telemetry and get analysis into what has transpired in an incident so far and some of the steps that have been taken to resolve it. Bits AI within incident management also has kind of a higher level view. So it's able to understand across your broader Datadog environment if there's an incident happening, in one service that's already been addressed or is in flight, how might that be affecting the issue that you and your team are working on? So it has kind of that cross environment visibility that's helpful. There's a lot that we've done with AI within incident management. I actually have a blog I can share, and I'll provide the link in the chat here if you want to read more. But this is definitely an exciting area of focus for our team. There's been a ton of investment here, and there will continue to be more. So appreciate the question. We're really excited about everything that the product team has been building there. Let's see here. Is Datadog on-call pricing based on the number of users using the product, or do we have license price based on the instance in the environment? Yeah, so Datadog on-call is it's per seat per month. So it's based on the number of users using the product. All right, let's see here. Let's see, another question. Do we have queues to monitor in Datadog like Opsgenie? Let's see, I think in exact terms, we don't have queues. I'd love to learn more about like how that works for your team, and that's information I could pass back to our product team, who are always open to suggestions. We have I think we probably think about it in different terms, where we have kind of an inbox of pages that can be organized based on the metadata that matters, whether they've been triggered, acknowledged, or resolved, or which services they apply to, or teams that own them. And we kind of use that as a way of sorting and filtering to help teams like organize the backlog that they may have. Ideally, we're not managing a large backlog, but that's how we think about it. Without looking into it any further, I can imagine that there's probably some similarities in how Opsgenie does queues, but I'd love to learn more if you've any specific feedback there.
Right, I think we've reached the end of the questions in chat.
I think so. Well, I think we can maybe hang tight for a few minutes and see if any other questions come through. But maybe Dan, we can go to the next slide and share those resources for folks to get a look at. Feel free to keep asking questions though. And just to add some more context here, at the QR code at the top, we have links to Datadog documentation, which includes 2 separate guides there. We have a guide to general migration. We also have guides specific to PagerDuty. And in the RapDev link, there's also pretty detailed resources on how their team can support really simple PagerDuty migrations or effective PagerDuty migrations.